Hello, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Sandy Essington and I'm a behavior health consultant for the Ulster County Head Starts. I wanted to talk a bit today about just managing some challenging behaviors with your children. This applies all the time and can be even more challenging now that we're home so much and children are frustrated and parents are frustrated, and so we might see a little bit more of those challenging behaviors. So I think the first thing I want to talk about is the importance of building that really positive relationship. Of course, you have a positive relationship with your child already, but being able to really just build on that. And sometimes it's hard when we're busy to find the time in the day to just have some of that special time to play with your kids and to have that quality time. And it's important to make time. Having 10 or 15 minutes during the day that you can say, this is our special playtime. It's one-on-one with your child where they just get your attention. They will be less likely to be looking for your attention in other ways if they know that they're going to have that, and maybe you have it as a certain time every day that after nap time or after lunch or whatever, that's your special playtime, something for them to look forward to, where it's one-on-one with each child so that they have your undivided attention. Also, I would like to think of it like a relationship tank, like a gas tank, that if it's running low, you would need to do certain things to add positive activities to be able to fill that tank. So you can kind of have that visual in your head. Gee, that my relationship tank is running low. Let me think of some things I can do to fill that tank and come up with some quality time. Encourage your child, always being encouraging and using positive language. We want to be able to, catch ourselves and try to use the positive words rather than the negative words. So we think of the opposite behavior. If a child is running in the house, like when they're running in the classroom and we say, please use your walking feet, we're telling them what we want to see rather than what we want them to stop doing. And that gives them the solution, that rather than just telling them to stop a behavior, we're telling them specifically what behavior to start. And there's that works. It's because sometimes they don't know what else to do. It takes some thinking as far as what we're looking for, what we really want to see. So keeping that in mind, and also keeping things simple. Really keeping, when we tell a child to do something, we want it to be just a single step direction, just one thing. We don't want to say, go upstairs, put your pajamas on, brush your teeth, and give them this whole list of things to do. We want it to be single step and simple, and then on to the next. That praise is very, very important. So making sure that we praise everything that we can. It may be something we expect from your child. Sometimes parents say, well, they're supposed to do that, so I'm not going to make a big deal of it. Well, make a big deal of it, because praising reinforces the behavior. The more you pay attention to that behavior and give them a lot of praise, the more they're going to do it. So if you give them a lot of attention for negative behaviors, they're going to do that more. So you want to give attention to the things you want to see the most and give the least attention to the things that you don't want to see, which is one reason why we want to stay calm when a child is acting out, because whether it's negative attention or positive attention, they seek attention from their parent. And so when we start yelling or get all excited, they're getting attention. So we want to respond to negative behaviors with staying calm. And that can be hard to do, I know. I'm a parent, I know it can be hard to stay calm, but that is very important. So one way of getting their attention, is being able to try to prevent that activity in the first place, that negative behavior in the first place, by kind of knowing your child and knowing what sets them off, and then keeping your eyes out. So if you see your child getting frustrated, to intervene right away and say, it looks like you're getting frustrated, and help them, encourage them on how to, don't do everything for them, but encourage them on what they can do differently. And that way you prevent the meltdown from the frustration. Anything else that you can do, if you know that your child is looking at another child and about to grab a toy out of their hand, or there's about to be a problem of some sort, that's when you want to intervene. And if that's a situation, say your child frequently has difficulties when playing with another child, then you want to stay very close to them when they're playing with another child, so that you can be on the lookout for that and try to prevent something from happening beforehand. If you can't prevent, then you can respond in a way where you're teaching, where you're giving them some new skills, which I'll get into in a little bit. Using, back to praise a little bit, just using any kind of physical warmth as well. So when you're giving praise, you can say, give me a high five, or you can give them a hug. And you see your children get a big smile on their face and get very excited when they're getting praise. And so that's just important. Anything that you can catch. So catch your child doing something well, doing something good. Always pay attention to it. Even if it's something, for example, if your child is always interrupting you when you're on the phone, and you tell them, I'm getting on the phone now, I need you to play quietly while I'm on the phone. And then halfway through your conversation on the phone, if they're playing quietly, you can ask the person to hold on for a second and just say, hey, Olivia, thank you so much for being so quiet while I'm on the phone. I'm going to be on for a few more minutes. Thank you for continuing to play quietly. And that way they, getting their attention sometimes does make them start talking, so it depends. But you want to definitely praise them if they're doing what they've been asked to do. That's, important. So whether it's a thank you for, or you did such a great job of, but making your praise specific. Just great job. It's nice. They like to hear that. But great job putting your toys away is a lot more specific and gives them, specifically what you liked about what they were doing. So make your praise, very specific. Thank you for using your inside voice when your sister was sleeping, that kind of thing. Using play. Play can be a powerful tool for a parent. You can use play to teach a lot of skills. You can use play to teach them how to take turns and how to share, and how to develop friendship skills, and how and when to give an apology. There's a lot of ways that you can take advantage and use the play to teach them a lot of things. You also want to link your praise to their behavior. So that's why, like when I said before, good job for putting your toys away. You want the behavior to be in there so that they understand it, and so that they're really feeling that praise. So another thing that's important is to really understand why your child is acting out, why they're behaving the way they're behaving. There's a reason, there's a purpose behind it, and we need to kind of be detectives and figure out what they're trying to tell us with the behavior. And they are trying to tell us something, whether it's I want you to pay attention to me, or I want this toy, or I'm hungry, or I'm tired, or I want to go to the park, or whatever they're trying to tell you something. So that's important for us to know what that meaning is, to make our expectations very clear. And we can talk a little bit also in a bit about having some household rules. So One of the things we can use is timeouts. We don't use timeouts in Head Start. That's not what we do in a classroom setting, but it is something that can be successfully used at home. A lot of people will say, yeah, been there, done that, tried timeouts, they don't work. There are different ways to do timeouts, and so I'm going to briefly tell you about how I recommend timeouts be done and what some of the problems are that sometimes get in the way of timeouts. So, first of all, timeouts should never be a threat. You should not use an opportunity to say, if you keep doing that or if you do this, you're going to spend time in timeout, because you're actually giving them attention. And you don't want the timeout to be putting them on stage. So you want to first give a brief explanation. If you're introducing timeouts for the first time or introducing a new way of doing timeouts, you want to explain to them how timeouts will work. Sometimes it works well to use like a teddy bear and to be playing with the teddy bear and to tell the teddy bear it's time to stop playing and go eat dinner, and the teddy bear keeps playing and doesn't listen, and so you play it out with the teddy bear, and you put the teddy bear in the timeout chair, and you time it, and you know, do the whole thing so that the child knows what it looks like. Time, 3 minutes seems to be, I know there's a lot of research, I know a lot of people say a minute per age, you know, for a year. If it's 2-year-old, 2 minutes, 3-year-old, 3 minutes. I've also heard 3 minutes is good for any age, so I usually use that, the 3 minutes. I don't tell the child 3 minutes because it's when I, as the parent, say that your timeout is up. But I'm watching. I have a watch or a clock or something near, maybe there's a clock on the wall near the timeout chair with a second hand that you can keep your eye on so that you're watching your 3 minutes. And then afterward, depending on why they went into timeout, make sure that you're returning back to the activity. So if they got a timeout for not listening, then if what they were supposed to do was put their shoes on, and part 2 of my video, I got cut off, I'm sorry. So I was saying, if you tell your child to put their shoes on and they didn't put their shoes on and they therefore get a timeout, then when the timeout is over, you're to tell them, are you ready to put your shoes on? And if they say no, then they can continue to stay in the timeout for another few minutes, and then are you ready to put your shoes on? So that you're going back to that activity that got them into timeout in the first place. Some of the real common mistakes in timeouts, one of the biggest is talking to your child while they're in timeout. So if a child's screaming and yelling while they're sitting in timeout, a lot of times parents will want to say, if you keep yelling, you're going to just keep staying in that timeout longer. And that is not helpful because, again, then they are on stage. Then your child is kind of learning that they can get your attention by ramping it up. And you don't want them to learn that. So you completely ignore the child while they're in the timeout chair. Don't look at them. Don't talk to them. Don't give them any kind of body language. You might want to do something that is looking fun, so that they want to come out of timeout to join you, so that they will sit and do their timeout so they can come out and have fun with you. Then when you return to the activity, when they're done with the timeout, you want to then praise when they are doing the activity, they're doing things right. So, if they come out of timeout and then they start acting in a positive way, then you want to lay on the praise so that they're clearly seeing the difference, that when they're in timeout, they're getting no attention at all. When they're doing something positive, they're getting a lot of attention. So in some ways, you want to be able to turn your attention on and off like a light switch, so that even when they're playing, you can be saying, wow, you're building such a nice big tower. You're so good at that. You're great at building. And then when they start throwing the blocks across the room, to just turn your face away and completely ignore it. And the minute they start playing nicely again, you turn your face to them and you tell them, "Oh wow, you're playing so nicely. I love when you play gently with your toys." And then they're learning very clearly. They get attention and praise for the positive. They do not get anything for the negative. Of course, if that negative becomes dangerous, then of course you need to intervene. But if you intervene with the least amount of attention, little is best. So if they're throwing the blocks and it's causing damage, it's breaking something, or they're throwing the blocks at another child, if you calmly and without saying anything go over and take the blocks and walk away. They're not using the blocks safely, so the blocks go away. That is a natural consequence, which is another thing that is helpful. Natural consequences are, instead of a punishment for an activity, if they're fighting with their brother and sister are fighting, a natural consequence is now you're going to have to play in separate rooms. A child's playing, misusing a toy, being aggressive or breaking a toy, then they don't get the toy. Toy gets taken away. Those are natural consequences. So those are very helpful as well, because the consequences related to the behavior specifically. Anything else about timeout? That's pretty much about timeout. Make your expectations very clear. Again, tell them what you want them to do rather than what you want them to stop doing. It's, instead of stop jumping on the couch, it's please sit on the couch. Instead of stop yelling, it's please use your inside voices. Making sure that you're using age-appropriate age-appropriate expectations of their behavior and age-appropriate language. So, make sure you're not saying to them, behave appropriately, if they don't know what the word appropriate means. So those are some things to think about. Getting back to house rules I had mentioned before. So sometimes it's helpful to have 3 or so, maybe tops 5 house rules that are things that just could lead to an automatic timeout, or are just things that they know are very clear expectations. And those could be things like, you want to phrase them positively. So if hitting is a problem, you don't want to put a house rule of no hitting. You want to put a house rule of, keeping your hands to yourself. So again, phrasing things in the positive and what you are looking to see rather than looking what you don't want to see. Make it very clear and simple, and pick things that can be applied in several different situations. You want to use words that will help them to learn to problem solve. And that if they're clear on what those house rules are, then you will want to kind of go over it with them in the beginning, and then make sure you're making it clear when they are breaking a house rule, and what that consequence might be. Also, you praise. So if they are following the house rules, to say, hey, you guys have been doing a great job of following the house rules. Hey, give me a high five. Or even having, you deserve, a special treat for that. Let's, go out to the park today, just to celebrate. Some sort of real recognition when they are. Otherwise, there's no reason to follow them. You want to make sure that, even if it's just a hug, but recognition. And then emotional vocabulary. So a lot of the times the reason that a child is acting out is because they're trying to tell you something, or they're feeling a certain way and they don't know how to express it. So teaching them how to express it by teaching them the words. So teach them by putting words to their feelings. Teach them what it is to be angry, what sad means, what anxious means, what frustrated means, a lot of different words that they can use. So if they're trying to get a toy pieces to fit together, and they can't get it to fit together, and you see that they're getting very frustrated, to go over to them and say, I see you are looking very frustrated that you can't get this together. Let me help you, or teach them how to do it so that you can help them. So now they've learned what frustrated means. Of course, they need to hear it more than just one time, but so that eventually they can use their words to say, instead of throwing the toy and acting out. You're also being preventative there by intervening before there's a meltdown, by kind of watching and seeing, that this is what's going to come next, so you intervene ahead of time. So, and there's been research that has been done that kids who do have words for their emotions they get frustrated less, they can tolerate frustration better, they get into less fights, they're less destructive behavior, they're healthier, less lonely, less impulsive, more focused, and do better with academics. So, and it makes sense because they are able to then let somebody know what they're experiencing, and they can get some help. How you teach that, you can talk about the feelings, like I said before, when it's going on. You could also use things like books. There's a lot of books out there about emotions and that help teach emotions, and we have some at the Head Starts and that you can ask about. There's also a list, and if anybody wants to check with me, I can get that list to them of books. Talk about how a TV character or a character in a book might feel in certain situations. You can be reading the book and say, how do you think so-and-so feels right then? And then talk about what could they do about it. You can do a game of coming up with all different situations and say, Hoppy the rabbit, and tell the story of what's happening. And then say, how do you think Hoppy feels? And then say, what do you think Hoppy can do about that? And you can make up all different scenarios. And this is a way of teaching. It's fun because it's a story and it's a challenge. And they're learning their emotional language, and they're also learning the problem solving when you say, what can they do about that? We also have the feeling faces. We have those in the classrooms. I also have some one-page sheets of feeling faces that I could give to people if you, reach out to me and ask. But they can be put on the refrigerator. You can teach with those, and you can also have your child, if they can't verbalize it, they can point to the feeling face. You can also ask them when they are not too upset. Every morning when they get up, you can say, how are you feeling today? And they can come over and point to the feeling, and you can talk about that feeling. If they say happy, oh great, what's making you happy? So that they're learning those emotions. Sometimes we do have the meltdowns, and kids get angry, and so what are some of the things you can do? Staying calm is important, because if they're angry and then you get angry, it gets them angrier. And if they feel from you the tension, it's going to make it harder. If they feel from you the calmness, it's going to help calm them down. So try to take a deep breath and remind yourself that, it's making things worse if you get upset, and don't stay calm. And we do have Tucker the Turtle book and Tucker the Turtle information, and I can get that information to you as well if you look for me and ask for it. My email, by the way, is Essington, SESSINGTON @UCCAC.com, and I can email you some of this information as well. So Tucker the Turtle is, we have different materials at the school, and there's a storybook as well, but Tucker the Turtle, when it gets angry, he takes, first he stops, and he thinks, just stop what I'm doing. He then tucks into his shell. He takes 3 deep breaths, and he thinks of calm thoughts and what he can do when he comes out of his shell. And then he comes out of his shell and thinks of solutions. So sometimes when we we use that to kind of tell them, children, how to handle a situation they think of Tugger the turtle. And they've also, I know some of the classrooms have actually made turtle shells out of like a big cardboard box that the kids can actually go into, which is neat. It's something you can do at home. So let's see. We talked about logical consequences. And anticipating and planning ahead and having backup plans is always helpful. You know your child. A lot of times you know what kinds of things are going to set them off, and so you want to be prepared. If you know that your child is going to get hungry when you're in an outing, then bring snacks. Just basic things of thinking ahead. Or bringing toys along. Offering choices, limited and reasonable choices. So even things like what they want to wear, and rather than saying, what do you want to wear today, to just say, would you like to wear the blue shirt or the red shirt? Would you like to have this for breakfast or that for breakfast? Just giving them like a choice between this or that. It gives them a sense of control, and that's important and can be helpful. Using first and then helps a lot too. When a child wants something, maybe they want to play with their toys, but it's lunchtime. You can say, first, eat your lunch, then you can go play with your toys. Or first put on your shoes, and then you can go play outside. And putting that together for them sometimes helps. It helps because it's simple, and it tells them what you want to see from them in order for them to get what it is that they want and what they're looking for. Thinking about using redirection. There's different types of redirection. You can use redirection as a prevention. So as I talked about before, if you know that your child has difficulty in a certain situation, or if you see your child getting frustrated, you can redirect them. If you maybe they look like they're getting into a battle with another child, they both want the same toy, and it's going to turn into something, you can approach and say, why don't we play with this toy, and when we're finished we can trade. Then you're directing them to the other toy as a prevention strategy. Sometimes it has to be because they're already in a challenging behavior, and so at that point you can redirect them by saying, suppose the behavior is that they're playing in the sink and making a big mess in the bathroom and water all over the floor. You can physically redirect them by, taking them and saying, let's go play with your toy in your room right now, and take them out of the bathroom. You can verbally redirect by saying, it's a really nice day. I'd really like to go out to the park. Or if you're on the phone and the child's trying to get your attention and somebody else is in the house, that other person might say, hey, why don't you go upstairs and show me your new book? Let's go read your new book. That would be, a way of the other person using redirection verbally. So redirecting is definitely something that can be helpful. You can also use redirection for teaching. So you can say, you give them kind of language. Maybe they're having that, like the example I gave before, if they're frustrated because they can't get the toy to fit together right. You can go over to the child and say, Jonathan, you can say, please help. You don't even make it complicated. Just say, Jonathan, you can say, please help. Or if a child is fussing because they're all finished with their lunch and they want to go play, and they're fussing in the high chair, you can say, Tasha, you can say, all done. And now you're giving them those skills. And hopefully at some point they learn that, and instead of fussing, they use the words. Using neutral times. So you want to teach when things are calm. That's the best time to be able to really teach things. So at a time when everything's going well and you're playing with your child, that's a good time to teach some of these skills as well. Don't wait only for times that there's a problem to teach. So keeping that in mind. Using ignoring. So the challenging behavior, children do use challenging behaviors because it works. It's like the squeaky wheel gets the grease. The child will act up and they do get your attention. It might not be positive attention, but it's attention. So you have to be careful of that you're not reinforcing the behavior by giving them attention for it. So when you're yelling at your child for their behavior, they're getting your attention. Try ignoring, as I mentioned earlier, of turning yourself off, on and off like a light switch. Try to ignore behavior by kind of watching them out of your peripheral vision to make sure they're safe, but not giving them attention for it. So if they want to throw themselves on the floor and cry and scream, let them cry and scream, and see that that's not going to get the attention. If they're doing something dangerous, or they're doing something where they're breaking things, or they're hitting somebody, or they're drawing with permanent marker on your wall, or something that you can't really ignore, then you want to use as little, you want to have the blank face and use as little talk as possible. You can walk over, take that marker out of their hand, and walk away. Or even if you want to say something, just say, markers are for paper, and take it out of their way. And then they can scream and cry, and you just walk away and take that thing away, whatever it is that they're being aggressive with. Even if it means having to put them in a timeout, you can do that by saying, it depends on what they're doing. If they're hitting, you can say, hands are not for hitting, and put them in a timeout and say nothing else. They know why they're there. Don't get into a power struggle. That's one of the worst things, to not get into a power struggle. That's not worth it. So again, it's important to figure out why they are behaving the way they're behaving, because that way you can address it. Sometimes it's things like, it could be a sensory issue. They could be wearing a shirt that has a tag in it that's really bothering them and itching them, and you can, without knowing that, you think that they're just acting out. So trying to figure out what it is really important, because then you can take the tag out of the shirt, or buy tagless shirts if the tags bother them. And now you've kind of solved a problem by figuring out what it was. So always look for what the cause is of the behavior in the first place. Anything else? Let me see if there's anything else. I think that covers the basics. I think it's important for us to, remember that how we respond is really important. And we as parents and we as human beings tend to give attention to kids when they're acting up. And when they're playing quietly, we tend to leave them alone, and we use that time to get our stuff done, and in a way that is teaching them that if you want my attention, you need to act up. And we have to think about that. Let's make sure we do the opposite, that we give them less of our attention for acting up and more of our attention when they are playing quietly and they're doing the right thing and they're doing a good job. And I think that's kind of one of the biggest things that I think works, is making sure that we're giving a lot of that attention, hugs, high fives, and just acknowledge all the positives as much as we can, and try not to make it a big to-do over the negatives. It doesn't mean they don't get consequences. Absolutely, they need consequences, but to do them quietly so that they're not getting our attention for it. So I am at Head Start on Mondays and Thursdays, and I am housed in the Kingston site, but I am available to parents at any of the sites. And I can be reached at extension 214. And if you are having any issues, have any questions, social emotional issues with your child or with anyone in your family, and would like to reach out to me, I would be glad to speak with you. And I am hoping that you are staying safe and healthy during this time. And I'm available, even though we're closed. I am available if you reach out through the website, and I can try to get in touch with you if you have any issues and would like to talk. Okay, so stay safe. I hope this was helpful, and I'll try to do something else like this again in the future. All right, thanks. Bye-bye.